On AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Been talking about this intermittently over the last several weeks. Illegal immigrants illicitly obtaining CDL licenses and killing people. From a Florida Turnpike to California to rural Indiana last week, Johnson County, where that illegal from Kyrgyzstan got a CDL in Pennsylvania and crashed into a transport van, gentleman driving 4 Amish men to and from work, a father, his 2 sons, and a family friend. Killed the 4 Amish men, the last I heard, the driver in critical condition. And this is something the state can do something about. When, after the California crash, Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation, put pressure on California, and California is in the process of revoking approximately 17,000 non-domiciled CDL licenses held by immigrant drivers, following federal findings that these were issued with expiration dates exceeding the driver's legal presence in the United States. But, of course, that needs to be done nationwide. And I understand it's not something you can flip a switch, but a big job for the Department of Transportation, and you would think state governments, even sanctuary states like California or, say, Illinois, would want to participate in rooting out those drivers for the purposes of protecting their residents. You would think that. Although it's not limited, by the way, to CDLs. This is, excuse me, an obvious place because, one, there's state licensure, so there's state and federal clawback opportunities. And 2, obviously, you're driving a massive truck, a tractor trailer, and you can't read road signs or you don't know traffic laws. You do something unbelievably dumb, like try to do a U-turn in the middle of an expressway. That illegal immigrant from India who did that and killed 3 people in a truck that ran into his trailer when he was jackknifed essentially in the middle of an expressway in Florida. And by the way, again, as I recall, the people that were killed in that crash, Haitian migrants. So this is not a race thing. It's a public safety thing. But it's not limited to people that are otherwise working. They're just in this country working to make a living, better themselves. Well, there are limits to that. And it's not just truck drivers. It's painters, too. Listen to this story out of Alabama.
A break in a more than a week-old kidnapping case.
We arrested Juan Guerrera, who we can place at the scene through investigative techniques.
Juan Guerrera out of the hospital after a canine helped law enforcement drag him from under a house in Bay Minette Monday. Investigators say they were trying to stop the car he and his sister were in when he bailed out and ran. He's been charged with 3 counts of kidnapping, though the sheriff isn't saying what led them to those charges. Because at this hour, investigators are still searching for Aurelia Chakak, her teenage daughter Narika, and son 2-year-old Anthony. Investigators say they were taken from their home on Ben Hamilton Road in Theodore last Saturday. The Mobile County Sheriff's Office jumped into action after finding a master bedroom mattress also missing, blood throughout the home, and their cell phones left behind. Investigators say a search warrant at a home on Clearview Drive turned up this black van.
We do know that there was a black van that was involved at that residence on several occasions the morning they went missing. That's a photograph of the black van that's up there. That is being searched as we speak as well.
And Silverio Garcia is also in Metro Jail. He was arrested on February 3rd for illegal possession of a gun. Sheriff Paul Birch says he is Aurelia's boss and is also dating one of her adult daughters. So far, he's not been charged directly in this case, but Birch is hoping he and Guerrera start talking.
What we've determined thus far is all of these individuals are painters for various construction companies. There's a couple different named paint companies that they kind of go between, and so that their connection, as we know right now, they're all painters.
Search warrants continue. This one today here at Azalea Grove Mobile Home Park. Investigators say it's where one of the suspects is said to frequent. Ultimately, they hope something leads them to find Aurelia, Narika, and Anthony.
We're hoping that someone will tell us where they are. Anytime you arrest somebody, you're in hopes that they're going to tell you what occurred, and then our main goal is to find them safely and bring them back home.
Mm-hmm. A missing mom and 2 minor children, and some physical evidence that suggests concern about their well-being at minimum. Again, not a race thing, public safety thing. And the individual who has been detained and charged, and the individual who is a person of interest who has not been charged yet, are here illegally. But they're painters, and they're just trying to make a better life for themselves. For more on the topic, the original topic, but this is of CDLs and the roadways, but this is bigger than that. Adam Coleman joins us, founder of Wrong Speak Publishing, also author of The Children We Left Behind, How Western Culture Rationalizes Family Separation and Ignores the Pain of Child Neglect. Adam, thanks for joining us, and appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I know you wrote a piece for the Post on the specific issue of trucking, and New York, Pennsylvania, California, Florida have all been implicated, and other states too, where not just where the accidents occurred, but with respect to the people in this country illicitly obtaining CDL licenses. And, it just undermines, as I was sort of intimating, this idea that just because somebody comes here illegally and goes to work doesn't absolve them of being here illegally, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't present a public safety threat, as we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a really, really massive issue, and there are many victims that a lot of people like to skim over because they're very much so focused on that person, which they have this vision of the American dream, Ellis Island, people coming here looking for an opportunity. But they don't want to consider that some of these people were trafficked here under false pretenses. Mm-hmm. They don't want to consider that they're contributing to a black market where there are people who are part of foreign gangs and mafias, cartels, who are fostering a black market within our own country. So they don't want to consider these things. They want to see it from rose-colored lenses. But what they're actually doing is contributing to the problem. And even for the people who are looking for an opportunity, they're being taken advantage of in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases.
Right. And so, I mean, here again, like if we were able to have rational discussions about policy and even policy changes, it begins with, enforcement of the laws that exist for good reason, as you're sort of describing. And then, look, if you can make out a case for a temporary worker program and abide like the actual strictures of what a temporary program like the Bracero program from generations ago would look like, just like we talk about H-1B, but the H-1B visa program's abused, or we talk about TPS, but the TPS program is abused. If you can make out a case for specific carve-outs for specific reasons for a finite period of time associated with need, in terms of America's interest, then we could potentially have conversations about that. But the approach taken by the open borders, abolish ICE, sentimentalists makes it very difficult.
Yeah, it does make it difficult. And specific to trucking, I think people also need to consider why is this problem seem to become more prevalent now and not, let's say, 20, 30 years ago. It's because 20, 30 years ago, the trucking was more of a high trust industry. You had to have relationships with people. The floodgates opened with cheap labor, especially when Obama changed the enforcement on it, not the law. The law still stands as far as the English language, but changed the enforcement of it, and it became exploited. So you can have all the laws and regulations, which we all thought trucking is this highly regulated outfit. Well, it's highly regulated, yes, but the enforcement, people would abide by it because at least at one point, we had a relatively high trust environment, and no one wanted to suffer the consequences of going against it. So if you were shut down as an operator, you stayed shut down, and there was a massive risk for you. But if you're a guy who lives in the shadows, it doesn't matter. If you're a trucking company that's operating off of a parking lot address, it doesn't matter to you, right? So the high trust is gone within trucking. So there has to be strong arm enforcement, impound their trucks, find the operators. You have to do these things, hold brokerages accountable.
Yeah, it was interesting because this week the Wall Street Journal opined on Florida's E-Verify law. Florida has been one of the leading states for job growth over the last several years under DeSantis, right there with Texas. But after they passed E-Verify in 23, with a couple of years now under the belt, what the Wall Street Journal writes is, the E-Verify mandate makes it harder for migrants to work to support themselves. It adds a burden on employers. E-Verify can also be unreliable because it relies on federal records that aren't always up to date. This means it can disqualify some immigrants with valid work permits. And the Labor Department data suggests that the E-Verify law has harmed job growth. In the year before the law took effect, Florida led the country in job creation, but employment growth fell by half in 24 and has been flat since last February. It's just interesting, the proponents of cheap labor, which is the position that the Wall Street Journal editorial board is taking, because the federal government's data can be unreliable, we should scrap any employer accountability rather than addressing the unreliability of the federal data so that the E-Verify system was more efficient.
Right. I think anyone with common sense understands what this really is. If this is a political thing, it's become a political thing. And in my mind, this shouldn't be a political thing. This should be about the prosperity of American citizens and the rightful laws. If you want to come into this country to become an American citizen and be part of our country, right, we should have the right people come here the right way of doing so. But just because we can get cheap labor should not be the reason why we should ignore everything that we have constructed about this country. So, why don't we just have the argument for slavery? I mean, they're just people who are looking for stuff to do. Maybe that will provide some opportunity. I mean, how far do we want to actually go just to have cheap labor? So it was easy during the 90s to send all of our cheap goods to China and not care if these people are working 80-plus hours a week, getting paid pennies on the dollar, because it's out of sight, out of mind. It's happening here. But no one wants to actually call it what it is because it's become political. So they have to crap all over anything that the opposition is trying to do. Florida, Republican-led right now, so anything that Florida does, they have to find some sort of critique. So the entire economy of Florida hangs on the balance of E-Verify. I mean, I don't believe that for 2 seconds, and I'm not an economist, but no one with common sense would think that. There could be a multitude of reasons as to why the economy in Florida is having some issues.
Yeah, and the racial component that is infused in this. I mean, you've heard the rhetoric, like we all have, that this is just targeting black and brown people because they're black and brown, and this is an intentional infliction of terror on black and brown people because they're black and brown. Everything with respect to law enforcement is rooted in white supremacy, and Jasmine Crockett talking about ICE being the modern day slave patrols and so forth. It's really talk about appeals to the lowest common denominator, going so far as this former New York State rep, Charles Barron, saying recently at a symposium that was about basically social justice, the same old, same old.
I have the distinct honor to be able to come before you and say I actually lost white population in my community. I lost them. They left. I didn't ask them why. They left. So if you see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 whites in my neighborhood, they're passing through. But that's on a serious note. We got 13.
Yeah, so this was opposing gentrification in part, and he mentioned we have 13,000 elected officials, so now black elected officials, so now's the time to be radical. Gosh, I might ask you have 13,000 black elected officials, and how is it going for a wide swath of black Americans in major cities like New York or Chicago? I just that the whole, I mean, if you reversed, of course, if a white politician had said anything like that about black people, this would be a national story. But for some reason, that sort of silly identitarian chippiness is something that's embraced, condoned. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a double standard, and I'm admitting that as a black person. There are certain things that we are allowed to say because maybe there's a certain amount of American guilt. There's a path that's given. But you're right. I mean, if you inverse the color, it sounds like a KKK rally. It sounds like when the KKK was running, the Senate. So, I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like to me as well when I hear that. But one thing I will say, you asked, how's it going? The truth is, when you hear people speak like this who are black, you can almost guarantee them the most corrupt black people you will ever see in public office or in private. That's the truth. They're usually people who are of a particular class, who speak a particular way, and it gains an applause and laughter, as you can hear there. But guarantee they're the most corrupt, inept people that you would ever want to encounter. You never want to give these types of people power. So whether they're white or black, if I see someone speaking this particular way in front of a particular crowd, that is a dead giveaway that this person is corrupt. So, you think of Al Sharpton, corrupt as they come. The list goes on.
Adam Coleman is the founder of Wrong Speak Publishing, author of The Children We Left Behind, How Western Culture Rationalizes Family Separation and Ignores the Pain of Child Neglect. Adam, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Adam joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Mike Lindell and the MyPillow employees want to thank you for your great support this past year. They want to make 2026 the best year ever. So to thank you, they are giving you free